How long does it take you to learn English well? And by saying well, we mainly mean up to an advanced level here, because that's the level that we really mean very often when we're talking about learning English well. Before I shoot this video, I want to give credit to a student of mine who inspired me to take this video in the first place. So thank you very much if you're watching. The student asked me, so look, what is happening to me? I'm learning English right now. I learn it every day. I've been learning it for a long time. Every day I may spend up to 20 hours watching English videos in a row, but when I actually sit down to do my exam test, I can't actually apply all that knowledge to the paper that I'm currently working on. Why is that happening, and what can I do about it? Am I a bad learner? Does that make me a bad learner? Does that make me a lousy person, who is incapable of remembering stuff, of keeping vocabulary in your head? Why is it going on? And here's what I have to say about this, and I have to say quite a lot. Generally, by and large, in this day and age, we're being encouraged to do listening as part of our English routine. And this is a viable method to bring more English into your life, to learn English naturally, to ingrain English into your subconsciousness. And very often that happens without much effort on your respect. I would advise doing so as well. And I have a few videos on this channel here which encourage you to actually listen to more English and make it part of your routine. But here's an important thing that you really need to bear in mind when applying this method to your everyday learning strategy. It is as follows. We need to make sure that we very clearly draw the distinction between two major goals that are driving us when we're choosing to go for an English audio podcast or for an English video by our favourite blogger. We need to make sure that we realise that there are two distinct goals. First, we have a goal of learning English that we really apply ourselves to. We tend to regard every opportunity when we're exposed to an English text or an English piece of audio or a native speaker's conversation as an opportunity to enrich our linguistic baggage, to improve our vocabulary. So wherever we go, a vocabulary notebook and a pen is always on us. It's always at hand. So we know that we're always prepared. And whatever we're listening to, we're very, very clear that we need to use it as an opportunity to record new things into our vocabulary notebook. And this is a valid approach, don't get me wrong. I do think it's super duper valid and it's super doable. It's super, it bears fruit. It does help you learn your English well. It turns you into a great learner. But also there is another goal that we may bear in mind when we're learning a language. We might be doing things in that language, including listening and, enjoying our favourite podcasts just for pleasure. So the learning element is missing. Well, here, the whole sphere, if you imagine it to be a sphere, would have to be filled by the learning purpose. Well, here the learning purpose is missing because we're only doing the thing we're doing in English because we're really enjoying the thing that we're doing. And the English input that we receive only comes as part of the territory. So we're not focusing on it specifically in this case. We may be reading a book in English just because that book has not been translated yet into our first language, but we really want to read it because we're interested in the subject of the book. We might be watching a film in English because it hasn't been dubbed in our language one, and we really want to watch it in the original language because we're into the actor who's playing the protagonist or anything like that. So we're only doing that because we're interested in the product, we're interested in the theme, in the subject, and that's why we're doing it in English. Well, here, right, is the overlap between the two purposes. And what we need to do in order to become successful learners is focus on the overlap. All right. So here are some of the difficulties that come if you're just listening for pleasure. When you're listening for pleasure, It's obviously brilliant. But also, you may fall into the trap of just doing the listening for the listening's sake. And that's when you're just listening and it's playing in the background. It is okay, but possibly, theoretically, you could have been more productive by just paying more attention to the language being used. You don't necessarily have to grab your pen and a piece of paper to put the language down into a vocabulary notebook, but you can definitely be a little bit more attentive when just focusing on that language. And just, watching a film is great, but still there is some room for productivity in that case. Or here, in this particular scenario, the danger of you focusing on the listening solely for the purpose of learning the language is actually that you might beat yourself up if you're unable to get the mark you want in your IELTS test or in your CPE test. Because you may think, oh goodness, I'm spending so much time learning the language. I'm spending so much time putting everything I learn into my vocabulary notebook. So why am I not getting the result that I want? I should be deserving this result, so I spent so much time learning it. Why am I failing my test? And here's the truth. The more emphasis you put on the things that you do, the more responsible you feel to live up to this standard that you set for yourself. Are you following me? It's really important not to stress yourself out by doing too much and then expecting an equivalent amount of result when it comes to you actually performing a skill in the real world. So think what you can do to reach the happy medium to actually make your listening practice productive, but also to make sure that you don't stress yourself out when the time to show your English actually comes. Here's a brilliant way of combining the two. If you're having formal English training, if you're going to a private centre where you study English, or if you're studying English with a one-to-one tutor, it would be lovely to save the educational bit just for the classroom. And then when you come home, you could actually back up the knowledge that you get in your class by doing some free time extracurriculum listening on your own. So just do a little bit of this sphere if this sphere is already present in your life. If you don't do any formal English practice, if you don't have private lessons, you could just spend some time doing this, mainly focusing on whatever you like. So if your preferred method of learning English would have to be, say, word lists, you could spend some time doing the word lists, right? Or you could just spend some time doing some grammar activities or things like that. But you have to also make sure that you do listen to things for pleasure, that you do intake some English for pleasure, and that would be a brilliant combination. On the other note, advanced English is all about vocabulary. So the main thing that separates an advanced learner from, let's say, an upper intermediate learner is that if you're studying English at an upper intermediate level, you would still have to take in quite a lot of grammar. Whereas if you're doing an advanced course in English, the amount of grammar you have to take in would have to be minimized in comparison with the upper intermediate level. So generally, the grammar of English is being taught, and I'm saying this to you from a teacher's perspective, throughout the beginner to upper intermediate spectrum. Once you cross that bridge and you go over to the advanced level, having jumped over the plateau, it's really important that you focus on chunks of vocabulary, and also it's really crucial that you do take in as much vocabulary as you can. Now it's time for you to get sensitive to the register. It's time for you to get sensitive to the nuances that make certain contexts. And right now, it's the right time for you to ask yourself this question. If you're not feeling progress, because I know when you're advanced, when your level of English is advanced, it's really hard to track your own progress. So you may think, am I progressing at all? So am I advanced yet? Is my English fluent enough yet? And here's the key. Try to ask yourself, what can I do right now that I wasn't able to do a year ago. And here we're talking about both objective criteria and subjective criteria. We just cannot reduce everything down to objective criteria and ignore the subjective criteria, because your feeling of your own progress matters just as much as the objective criteria. Those two criteria matter. Both of them matter. So in order to answer that question in an objective fashion, you might ask yourself questions such as, can I understand more accents right now? Can I explain what I mean faster? Am I actually getting a better communicator? Can the other person now understand much better what I have to say during a conversation? Do I actually encounter more words that I can recognise in a text? Is the meaning getting clearer to me? And this is also a factor that could be thrown here, because generally it has to do with our feelings about our own performance. But if we're talking about factors that are purely subjective, you could ask yourself things like that. Am I feeling that I'm progressing fast? Because sometimes you may be doing just the wrong thing. You may still get stuck in endless translation when you're in the advanced level, and that will actually let you down in terms of you not being able to develop this sense of the English language. The feeling of the language is really important, both for your internal sense of grammar and also the words that you choose when you talk to other people, and your ability to keep up a coherent conversation with another human being. So that's one question that you can ask. Is my accent getting better? That's another question you may ask yourself. And this is a subjective feeling, so you might not have recorded yourself recently to compare the accent, but generally this is something you may feel about your accent. Another person might have commented on your accent, so take a mental note of that and use that as a little stroke. A little pat on your back, right? A little stroke on your head. We're not talking about a heart attack or anything. Am I feeling more confident about my English performance? Am I feeling more confident when I'm talking to a native speaker or when I'm talking to my teacher? Am I actually feeling more confident when I have to interact in a social situation? Am I becoming a faster email writer? Things like that, because when you're writing an email, you can't necessarily, you can't really control if another person is understanding whatever you're writing at that particular moment in time, but you can actually track your own progress by asking yourself, oh, how long does it take me to write an email right now when compared to my progress, let's say 1 year ago? Those are all brilliant questions that you can ask yourself to determine which level you're at the moment. And also, it's also possible that you may be doing something that is leading you to a slower progress rather than a faster progress. It's really vital that you bear in mind that generally some ways work better, some ways work slower, and also multiply that by your own personality and your own preferred learning style and the learning style that is working greatly for you. All of that is the denominator of success. So generally make sure you don't ignore that equation. You might follow tips provided by people like myself or other YouTubers, and there are quite a lot of them, and many of their tips are really great, and I have followed them myself quite a lot in my career in my own language development. But you also have to make sure that you add more variety in your learning styles to see what works best for you. If you do already know, though, what works best for you, that's great, stick with it. But if you haven't worked that out yet, make sure you experiment from time to time. You do try to see how various learning styles play out for yourself and see where that takes you. And don't worry about progressing up to advanced, by magic. It all takes practice, and it is a skill you can practice. Remember the 10,000 hours rule? Well, it applies here perfectly. So please don't get stuck in this paradigm that, I should be doing something very concrete in order to reach my goal. Like 15 minutes per day will do for me. And 15 minutes per day, yes, regular practice is better than sporadic moments of practice. But also make sure it's doable. It's actually doable to you. Don't stress yourself out, and I know you can do it. And if you have any comments, please leave them down below. Or if you have any preferred means of learning a language, please put them down below. And also don't forget to ask your questions, because those might inspire further videos from me. And I hope to talk to you very soon, folks. I hope you have an enjoyable day, an enjoyable week, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for watching and supporting me in this channel. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so yet. I'll talk to you in my further videos. Bye!